Hello and welcome to the first installment of Alt D. I would like to give you a regular overview, some tidbits from the German alternative media, and seeing that we're in the sea crisis at the moment, I thought I'd start out with Dr. Bodo Schiffmann and his ear, nose, and throat practice in Sinsheim called the Schwindelambulanz. So that would be outpatient treatment for people with dizziness and vertigo. He's basically someone who treats infections of the inner ear, and he is become someone who is speaking out lately, and his videos are getting a lot of views, as we can see here. This was released a few days ago, has almost 250,000 views, and he starts out all of his videos as a good German, explaining exactly his political classification, how he would classify himself. He tells us that freedom is the ultimate good in society, that he makes mistakes, he's an objective person, and he doesn't make any claims to having the ultimate wisdom. He would just like to get people thinking. He is founding a political party. We'll get to that in a second. And he's also a supporter of the basic law in Germany. They don't have a constitution yet since the addition of the 6 East German states 30 years ago. They're still getting around to that. And he's for diversity of opinion, and he would like experts of all persuasions to be considered, and not just necessarily some that are always being paraded around on the mainstream media. I think we see this in all countries of the world. There's a few select people that get to do all the talking, and others who are just ignored. Dr. Schiffmann himself is a Christian, and he's also said that he likes the influences of Buddhism. And moving along, he is founding or co-founding a political party called Widerstand 2020. That would be Resistance 2020 party. He's trying to get people who are negatively affected, people who are affected by this current crisis, to band together for reason and understanding, and trying to move past the political decisions that are being made here in Germany without an open discussion. We'll also touch on that in a second. He also, in every video here, we're already by 2 minutes, you can see he's a new thinker. He wasn't really politically active or active in any way outside of just uploading videos about middle ear issues. He, in this case, then would consider himself a free journalist. He knows that the SARS-CoV-2 virus is dangerous. He also knows that flu viruses are dangerous. And he also knows that there are many other deadly illnesses or diseases. He is always trying to be critical and objective in all that he does, and as a emergency medical specialist and a paramedical assistant, he believes that he is qualified to put in his 2 cents. And I would just like to say, and this is my first episode, I agree with almost all of these introductory statements. So if I don't mind stealing from Dr. Schiffmann, I would like to say that I agree with him, and that would basically cover my own political and ideological standpoint. So, moving on, he also tells us that this information is his personal opinion and the results of his own personal research, and he is trying for the best results, and this is his right to state his opinion and the freedom of the press. He knows that COVID-19 and the flu are illnesses that people should protect themselves from, especially people in risk groups need a special protection from this. Dr. Schiffmann also stresses that people should conform to the official guidelines, most likely because it's very easy here in Germany to be charged with incitement. So he's very careful to protect himself against that. In his videos, he goes through the daily nonsense, the outrageous headlines, the political developments, the advertising. Now in Germany, you can see these are being put out on public billboards saying her son only wanted to play soccer one more time and stay home, and his neighbor just wanted to go party one more time, stay home. The public shaming that they're using on people is pretty crazy. He also talks about the new guidelines, and you might have seen this also in New York City, how this has come out. But the German Resuscitation Council has now put out new guidelines for resuscitating people. If you're going to resuscitate someone, you should call the emergency services, lay a towel or clothing or something over their head, and if you just happen to have a electroshocker there, you can give them an electrical heart massage. But other than that, you should pretty much just leave them to die. Well, I guess people have said they're already dead, so just leave them dead and don't bring them back to life. But he goes to the Robert Koch Institute, that's the official healthcare organization in Germany, and as you can see here, the numbers, like pretty much everywhere else, have followed the curve and are now tapering off to 0. And this is the one diagram that I really wanted to show everybody, because this explains everything about this virus. In the Medscape English medical portal that talks about common colds and practice essentials for medical practices across the entire world, you see that throughout the course of the year there are seasons for various infectious diseases, upper respiratory tract infections, and viruses and whatnot. And as you see, it is well known that from December until April, and tapering off here as you can see in March and April, is the coronavirus season. This is something that happens every single year. The flu season begins in November and extends through March. This is something that happens every single year. As you can see with strep throat, you hardly see any at all in the summer months. Influenza, you hardly see any in the summer months. And there are enteroviruses, which we call summer flus, and those are something that people are also exposed to in the summer months. They are also in the coronavirus family. So this is definitely a graphic that people need to get out there and share to know why this began in December and why it's ending in April. It's a perfectly natural phenomenon that happens every year. So he also goes through the timelines. What is the danger? Let's look at the numbers for Germany this year, the death rate. This is people who are over 65 and their death rates. We saw in 2017, in the beginning of the year, there was a pretty large flu wave, you could call it. In 2018, at the beginning of 2018, there was an exceptionally large flu wave, and average deaths were, you could say here, almost 50% higher than normal. Every winter, at the end of every winter, there is a bit of a raise and then it drops back down, and then you have your seasonal averages. This is all stuff that doctors are very well aware of. So he does a very good job pointing out the information. I recommend all of his videos. You can actually click to the subtitles, and if you go to the settings, if you go to subtitles, you can go to auto translate. You'll be able to select any language. I've already selected this to English. It comes out on my computer as German to begin with, and it will give you an automatic translation. That's obviously not ideal, but it's better than nothing, and you'll be able to get all of the information that Dr. Schiffmann shares delivered right to you, and be able to read most of it yourself here with the automatically generated subtitles. So, moving right along, I did want to share from a later video of his. This is the 23rd, also with almost 250,000 views. And basically the German people were promised that when this curve gets down to below than 1, we'll be able to reopen the government and reopen society and life, and people will be able to get back to doing what they do every day. And what we see here is that the infection rate was actually increasing quite dramatically when they started with this. And he breaks down this table into when the measures in Germany were actually instituted. So what we have is the beginning of the identification of this coronavirus wave, and then events with more than 1,000 people were banned at this point. Point number 2 on the line. Point number 3 on the line, he's saying if this had not been the case, this line would have continued to rise exponentially, like they warned us all it would. Part number 5 here, this is when people started to, they closed the schools. They announced the school closings in Germany, and people started buying up all the toilet paper and flour and noodles. Interesting thing, the flour in Germany was all gone, and that's the one thing that's had the hardest time being restocked in the shelves is the flour. I usually see like one broken bag at the bottom of the pallet in all the supermarkets. And then the lockdown began at point 6 here on the line, and this is actually when the effective reproductions rate has already down. And this was the point where they would promise we could go back to normal, but this is actually the point in the curve where they set all of these things in motion. And now we're already way at the end of May and April, excuse me, and now they're telling us that as of next week we're all gonna have to wear masks, which he actually goes into in another video, saying how those are detrimental, raise levels of CO2 in the blood, and they cause more problems than they're worth, recycling the viruses within the mask, so you're constantly reinfecting yourself if there is anything that may have been inhaled and exhaled. So needless to say, I'm going to keep this one very short. Enjoy the work of Dr. Bodo Schiffmann, and tomorrow I'll bring you Herbert Kickle's speech in the Austrian Parliament, where he rakes the Prime Minister of Austria, Kurz, over the coals. And I'll also show you where to find out the daily nonsense in Germany. There is a program called Extra Dry, where they just go through all of the insanity that you run into with German bureaucracy. So we got a lot of work to do. We're covering a lot of interesting topics for you if you're interested in Germany and how that relates to everything that's going on in the world. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'll see you tomorrow.